quote-unquote rogue sites. So you're going to have a lot of international sites being shut down or blocked because of this. So that's one way. I know that the European Commission, EU Commission, is investigating it now, and they are specifically against SOPA because of some of the pressures it's going to put on the EU, based on the Americans enacting this law. So I don't know the details of their support or how they're against it exactly, but I do know that there has been some pushback against it in the EU. Okay. Well, it doesn't look very good. What do you think the chances are of this bill getting passed, and who wrote this piece of legislation, this loving piece of legislation? I don't know the specific author of it. I know that there are, I believe, 15 Republicans and 10 Democrats who are supporting this bill, so it has pretty broad bipartisan support. And I don't think that it's going to get passed in the current form. There's been so much pressure to amend the bill and to lessen its scope that I don't think there's much political capital that the people who are supporting it have left to go forward with it in its current state. I know that one of the co-sponsors of the bill kind of wavered yesterday after the hearings, saying that there's some, they can make some leeway in some ways to make this a little bit less broad and make it less of a creating the great firewall of America's as some of the critics are calling it. Right. Yeah, this sort of looks like it could turn us into some sort of Chinese type thing. They could claim anything being piracy, any type of information, like WikiLeaks putting out information that it got leaked to it. That could be claimed piracy is what it seems to me. And it sort of reminds me of back when I was in college and the MP3s were big and people were downloading them everywhere. And then they finally came out with their ruling, which led to this business of iTunes and Apple, charging 99 cents for songs that people were getting for free and sharing between themselves. Right. This is a continuation of that fight. The entertainment industry, movie industry, the music industry, they've not found a way to combat piracy through adapting their business models in any meaningful way. You've started to see some of that with the emergence of Spotify, Mog, some of these other music streaming websites, Netflix. So you're starting to see some adaptation there. But SOPA is definitely a continuation of that fight that you saw start with Napster. And I think that you're going to find that they're going to have to amend this bill in one way or another. Otherwise, there's going to be there's just too much pressure on politically on the people who are sponsoring it to change it. Otherwise, they're going to be facing some tough fights in the years to come. Yeah, and if it doesn't, you're going to have the Google police knocking at your door. And who wants that? They know where you live. They certainly do. Well, let's move on. Yesterday, we printed a story called DOJ, Make It a Federal Crime to Lie on the Internet. And we actually quoted you in this one, too. Basically, the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, CFAA, they want to change that to basically go after people lying about their age and their weight, whatever. What is the deal with this thing? This is insane, it looks like. It is insane, and it's not that they want to change it. They basically just want the bill to be, which is very vague right now. They want to take an extremely broad interpretation of the bill and be able to apply it towards violations of terms of service. So that means the terms of service of any website. If you use Google, for instance, Google has in its terms of service that no one under the age of contract may use their search engine. In most states, the age of contract is 18. So if you're 17 years old and you search anything on Google, which every 17-year-old does, presumably, you are in violation of CFAA and could technically be charged under federal criminal law because of that. So this seems like something petty that they could use. They want to get you on something else, but they don't have the proof. Well, we'll get them on this terms of service thing. It's very broad. And, I think it's apropos that it's the Department of Justice doing this when they just got caught sending a bunch of guns to Mexico trying to frame the Second Amendment. So, exactly. They want to turn everybody into theirs. Now, looking into some other articles that
we've covered over the years. This one earlier this summer, embedding YouTube videos may become a felony. And if a website amends a YouTube video that is determined to have infringed on a copyright and more than 10 people view it on that website, the owner or other owners associated with that website could face up to 5 years in prison. Now, this was coming out of Senate Bill 978. What's the status of this bill?
It's still under consideration, as I understand it, and so it's pending. And I don't believe that this one has much chance of passing in its current form, though. As you can see, between this and SOPA and a number of other pieces of legislation that are currently in the works or under consideration, there's a concerted effort by the Hollywood lobbyists and other entertainment lobbyists to pass legislation that protects copyrights in a much more drastic way than it currently is, than they currently are protected. So this is part of a bigger story of them trying to protect their intellectual property.
What this looks like to me is that they're kind of setting the stage for a Cyber Patriot Act. That something big happens to the internet, most likely caused by a government agency, whether it's our government or the Israelis or any other anybody who's developing Stuxnet out there. They caused this problem, and then all of a sudden, wow, now we have the solution. It's clamped down on everybody talking about anything, posting videos, sharing files. I mean, this stinks to high heaven when I look at it, and it really. It scares me. I mean, what do you see the future of this happening? Do you see the same thing going on here?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I can't say that, where exactly it's headed, but it's extremely important to be keeping a watchful eye on every piece of legislation that affects the general public, affects freedom of speech, and affects our access to information. So while all of these bills might have innocuous purposes, at least on the surface, they certainly put together, or in the case of SOPA, can have some, malicious effects, and especially towards freedom of speech and freedom to access information. And so, it certainly seems as though we're headed down the wrong track with all of this legislation, even though I believe in the protection of intellectual property. I think that's important, but I think at the same time, it can't come at the cost of our civil liberties.
I agree. Now let's switch to another subject, the EAS test that we had just last week or week and a half ago.
Right.
Apparently they wanted to do this on the web, but they had some failures going on with there. Did you watch the EAS test? Did you experience it? Did you have any outages?
I didn't see it as it happened. I did read about it and watch some video of it after the fact, and I know that it was a pretty big public failure. It's not totally enacted right now, so they're still, obviously they're testing out the testing system, is the way it seems to me at the moment.
Right, to suddenly put in some sort of Cyber Patriot Act that's going to take everybody's rights. Back in 2009, I made a documentary called Police State for the Rise of FEMA, and we cover in it this, one of the big stories was Rod Beckstrom, who was with the NSA, suddenly deciding to quit because he thought their mission was becoming too involved into the American people. And in that, we found, a couple other articles. In New York, they were testing an Xbox-based alert system that state authorities are testing a plan that would see the Emergency Management Office issue alerts over online gaming networks in addition to regular channels. And I mean, what are your thoughts on that type of government intrusion coming into our online games, into our Xboxes? I mean, anywhere where people want to be, seems like the government wants to be in there telling you what to do at some point.
Right. I mean, personally, I find any intrusion of the government to be distasteful at the very least, and possibly, an extreme infringement on my civil liberties at the worst. So, as a gamer, I don't want to be interrupted by something if I'm in the middle of playing a video game. But that's more of just a preference thing. It's not really that big of a deal on its surface. But if it's being used for broader purposes other than to let me know that there is an earthquake about to happen, if that were possible, or some other natural disaster, or a terrorist attack or something along those lines, then I would be uncomfortable with it if it's not only used for that kind of warning purpose.
Yeah, the government seems concerned with domestic terrorists. From what I've seen, they want to go after people, and they put out videos of this, who are buying gold, selling cars on the side of the road, walking around with backpacks and taking photos. I mean, that describes a lot of Americans that I know who go out there and do this type of stuff. So, I mean, by putting these little intrusion tentacles into everything that we do online, over the media, over, basically everywhere where people are, we look at TVs now. I'm surrounded by them. And, it's really scary, and it's a precedent that I don't think is going to end well. And I don't have good feelings about this in the future. What are your thoughts on the future of this and our real cybersecurity? I mean, do you think they could just take down the internet with one kill switch?
Well, I don't know the technical abilities necessarily, but I do know that, for instance, Verizon had an outage that just last week or 2 weeks ago that killed internet access for millions of people across the country of their customers. So I do know that the system is connected in a way that it's possible to shut down access for a lot of people. And, I think that as the internet provides us with the ability to get our voice out in a way that we never have before. But it also provides other people to look in on us in a way that we never have before. And so we can see Big Brother getting closer and closer every day if you're one to be watching for something of that nature. So I definitely think we all have to be careful. And I'm not necessarily convinced that every bill that comes in that has to do with the internet that comes before the Senate or the House is going to be necessarily used to infringe upon our civil liberties or to enact a police state or anything of that nature necessarily. But in a democracy, we all have to pay attention to how our government is acting and make sure that it's acting for us and not for itself. Eternal vigilance. You got it. Andrew, thank you very much for joining us. Keep on writing, and we will probably keep linking to your articles because I think you got a good head on your shoulders, and you're definitely on the lookout for what's going on out there, especially when it comes to the government and infringing on our personal freedom. So thanks a lot. Thank you very much. Well, that's our show today. I've had a great time hosting, my first time. Maybe I'll be back here again if Jones likes my performance. And of course, I want to let people know, put that name key back up. I would like to show people, I have my email address right there. It's robd@infowars.com. If you got any news tips, guest ideas, anybody you think we should have on the show, drop me an email. Let me know. Let me know that you're watching. Let me know what you like, what you'd like to see changed, and we'll see what we can do. Also, don't forget, if you're not a member of PrisonPlanet.tv and you're watching this on YouTube, please consider subscribing. It's very easy to do. We have a couple great plans for you right now, especially with this Christmas season. Our first one is a Patriot plan. It is $39.95. I think we'll run that till the end of January. And the other one is our Info Warrior Pack, which is 70% off. It's all of Alex's 18 DVDs for $129.95. And the Patriot Pack is $39.95, and that's a year of Prison Planet TV. And with the Info Warrior Pack, you also get a full year of PrisonPlanet.tv. So, with that in mind, please consider supporting us. We appreciate it, and keep on watching. Alex will be back next week. Aaron's on tomorrow. We got Mike Adams on Monday, and then we're going to have Paul Joseph Watson hosting the show from England on Tuesday. And so that's about it. Thank you for watching. It's InfoWars Nightly News, and I'm your host, Rob Dew. Take care.